also going to start recording. Yay, marhaba. This is exciting. Oops, I missed a Gwinnett. Oh, it's Cindy. Sorry, Cindy. We're just going to keep talking about Cindy. Oh, that's funny. Jenny, I should know this, but I forget where you are in Georgia. Can you remind me? I totally forgot. I need to do better about remembering where people are. Mari! Ahora te veo. Yay. Oops. Hold on, I'm kicking stuff. Nina's in the house. Oh, yes, I do have the recording. So when you guys go to, let me remember because I can't type and talk at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I'm going to drop the link in the chat. On like the third slide of that interactive slideshow is the link to the recordings. It's also on the first 2 slides as well, but it's not as obvious. So the recordings so far with Marcy Webb, Bill Van Patten, and Chris Nicely are all there at the saved playlist. So yay, fantastic. By the end, I wonder if I could say all the names in order, like those weird icebreaker games where you have to say like what everyone's bringing to the picnic. Maybe I'll be able to do that. That's my challenge. Ooh, we got to cap counting. Awesome. Okay, so 7:04. Welcome. We're super excited, like I said, to host you. I say we on behalf of Flag, but this is super just kind of grassroots. They gave me permission and I took it. And so it's really exciting. Tonight we have, I don't know where she shows up on your screen, but for me, she's right here. It's like the Brady Bunch. Boop, boop, boop. My awesome colleague, Adrienne Riley. She has taught, she's like one of the most organized people I've ever met and super focused, super intentional. And she also has, for me, what I think a lot of us would maybe consider not a rare experience, because now I'm looking at like Marty's face and I know you have the same experience. So like, maybe it's just me. I've only ever taught the same levels. So I don't know if that's like a confession session. I don't know what this means, but I've only ever taught levels 1 and 2. And Adrienne's taught like every level of Spanish at her school. And so her perspective is always really, really awesome because I think of alignment as a ladder. And so as a novice teacher, we're pushing them up the ladder. And we're going, look how much they've grown. Look how much they didn't know before. It's like your kids, you know, you're like, they couldn't do anything and now they can do so many things. And the upper level teachers are looking down the ladder going, yeah, keep it coming. Like they need to stretch a little bit more. And so that perspective is always really, really valuable when you're trying to align. And, you know, ideally those people are like my incredible colleagues who are like organized and open and just awesome. So super, super excited. We've got some Georgia people and beyond. Adrienne's got some awesome resources she's going to share. So she's going to, Adrienne, if you want to go ahead and like screen share, go for it. But no rush or anything on there. And I'm going to scroll up a little bit and double check who all, let's see, did I answer all the things? Yeah, got the recording link. I'm going to move. We've got the closed caption happening. So hopefully that shows at the bottom of your screen below what she's sharing now. And you can obviously, if you don't use Zoom all the time, we use Zoom, but if you're using Teams or Google Meet, you've got the view options in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. So you should have some gallery options or like speaker side by side. Obviously camera optional, adult beverages are encouraged. Tonight, I thought a nice pairing would be a French 75. I figured Adrienne would appreciate the bubbles because she's very fancy. And it just was, it's 3 ingredients. So also it was like, you know, it was easy. So yay, Adrienne, take it away. Will you also tell us your experience and like a little bit about yourself, like how you came to language teaching?
Yes. So hi, everybody. Like Meredith said, my name is Adrienne Riley and I work at Peachtree Ridge High School. This is my 13th year teaching, yes. And all 13 of those years at Peachtree Ridge. So it's a very special place. I haven't had any reason to even want to leave. I came to teaching because, and I came to the decision pretty early. I loved Spanish. I liked teaching. I was one of those like kids who liked tutoring other kids and pretending to like teach, you know, little children and stuff like that. And I ended up doing an internship actually after my freshman year of college. and it's called Learning Bridge Richmond, but it's a program, it's a national program in the United States, but they basically take college students who think that they want to be teachers, and they place them in different inner city middle school areas around the United States. And it's kind of like real world. Like you literally go to this other city and you're living with several other college students for like 10 weeks for the summer, and you teach. But that's what kind of solidified it for me, that the classroom is where I want to be. And it still is right now. Like Meredith also said, I have taught almost all of the levels, not level 4, but I have not taught level 4, but I've taught Spanish 1, 2, 3, 5, and AP Spanish Lang and Culture. And right now this semester, well, this year, I have taught 2 and 5 last semester, and I have 2 and I have AP this semester. And just so you all know, I'm very thankful that Meredith has provided this opportunity. This I would say is my first presentation ever. I did work a little bit with Nina and the Hablemos conference, but I was more of a facilitator and not necessarily like a presenter where I had to create stuff and things like that. So this is my first presentation. Yes. I'm a little nervous, but I'm really excited. And as I was preparing for this, I found out that I had a lot to say, maybe a little too much according to my husband when I did the prep with him. So bear with me. I can be a little chatty. My coworkers know that. But my goal and my hope for you all is that whether you are just getting into teaching and backward design is something that you're not really familiar with, or if like me, gotcha. Or if like me, you are you have a few years under your belt, but sometimes it's just good to have refreshers, you know, because I know that the majority of us all know what backward design is. But let's be honest, especially right now with this pandemic teaching that is not the business right now, things get hectic, your life gets crazy, and sometimes it's just easier to survive and come up with some quick random plans just to have them doing something than it is to taking the time to be intentional. And so that's what I am hoping that this presentation does for you guys. So here's my agenda for tonight. Like Meredith said, I'm a planner, so I have the agenda set out to help keep me organized too. First, we're going to talk about what the heck is it, and why should I even consider this planning method. Then I'm going to go into how I have used and not used, and what have been those consequences of not really being intentional with my planning. A couple of tips connected to backwards design that I have learned along the way, and then actually taking that backward design into our professional and our personal relationships. So let me get into first, what is backward design? And basically, as we all know, backward design is an educational method where we're planning our specific curriculum and our goals beforehand, right? We are taking a look at what we want the end result to be before we are looking at what activities we're going to be using, what assessments, what rubrics, all of that. Here are 3 kind of sensible steps to approaching backward design that I really like. The first one is, as I've already mentioned, identifying what are your desired results. What is the end goal? Whether that even looks like, what is the end goal for a particular unit? What is the end goal for the semester? I have found that that, like Meredith said, having taught multiple languages has that, not languages, what am I talking about? Multiple levels. I'm making stuff up, folks. Having taught multiple levels, it has given me actually a different perspective about what it is that I want the end result for my students to be. For AP, for example, the end result is more of like a semester long, a year long, that's kind of what I'm looking at. For a level 2, for level 3, I focus a little bit more on those units. What is the end result for those particular units? Once you move past determining, okay, this is what I want to see my students at the end of whatever, then it is determining acceptable evidence, which is basically like, what are your parameters? What guidelines are you using? What rubrics are you using to actually get those results? That's an interesting one. I'm going to go into more detail a little later. And then finally, once you have established those first 2 steps, going into planning the learning experiences and specific activities and things like that. Before I move on, I do want to mention, Meredith and I were talking yesterday about this particular topic, and one of the concepts that was constantly thrown out was the idea of self-reflection, and how self-reflection is connected to this intentional form of planning. And for me, as a teacher who has taught for several years, I have found that if I am going to try to be intentional in planning, I really can't do that effectively unless I have taken the time to be honest about myself and to be honest about what I did the year before. Otherwise, I might just be making plans that, like, the same old random plans that didn't work last semester. So, for example, for me, with the block schedule that we're on, I taught Spanish 2 in the fall, and I'm teaching it again this spring. And with this pandemic teaching, I am definitely having to take the time to sit back and think, what worked, what did not, what were my expectations, were they realistic, all of that stuff. I cannot effectively prepare a spring semester Spanish 2 pandemic style unless I have taken the time to do that reflecting on myself and my teaching and all of that. So I am going to also go back to self-reflection a little later, but I thought that was a really essential concept that Meredith and I were talking about in our planning.
Yeah. Well, and we mentioned too, like colleagues, and I just dropped in the chat, so once you reflect on your own stuff too, that second step that you just had, which is perfect, like what's determining the acceptable evidence? Like, it's all fun and games planning, when you're like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And then you're like, oh my God, like, am I grading all of this? First of all, am I giving what? Like, no, I'm not. Like, what are we doing here? And then when you're in a department like ours of 14 people, and like on a course, you want things to be as consistent as possible, because if I go, oh yeah, just whatever you write in Spanish is great, but somebody else has, or vice versa, whatever, that acceptable evidence has to be as aligned as possible, which I think, like you just said, starts with the honesty and being like, there's trust, there's vulnerability, there's openness, there's all those things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Delving a little bit deeper into our first step of identifying your desired results, I have here a link to the ACTFL proficiency guideline. So one of the things that I was thinking about when I was preparing this was, what are we actually going to and looking at when it comes to what these end results are? So for AP, again, for me, thankfully I have, like, all of those results are kind of spelled out through the College Board. all of those like perfectly organized rubrics and examples of student work. We know exactly what it is that we want them to do with the email, the essay, the conversation, the cultural comparison. Everything is kind of streamlined. And so I kind of asked myself too, like if for some of the other levels, and one of my recommendations for you all, especially if backward design is something that might be a little new, or you just haven't really gone back to it in a while because life happens, but taking the time to think, what specific guidelines am I actually using? Right? Like, what have I taken the time recently to look at the state guidelines or the national guidelines, any professional organization guidelines such as ACTFL? Do I actually know what I'm looking for? And so then that made me think about some of my experiences with Spanish 3. And I'm about to call myself out here in a second. But I know. So when I first started teaching Spanish 3 years ago, I remember that one of our like kind of goals, one of our end goals for the students was like, we want them to be like to express themselves about all of these different topics, and we're going to have all these debates, and we expect for them to use the present and the past. And in Spanish 3 at Peachtree Ridge, we do subjunctive, and to use the subjunctive, and then the future and the conditional, and all of these, and like this is our expectation. And so we have all of these activities and things associated with this expectation. And if you see on my slide on the left hand, this is a screenshot of the superior level from the actual proficiency guidelines. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. Plus, it's kind of fuzzy and weird looking. But basically, so I'm going to get up kind of close to the screen so that I can see it myself. But just like those first couple of lines, speakers at the superior level are able to communicate with accuracy and fluency in order to participate fully and effectively in conversations on a variety of topics, informal and informal. This is what we were expecting our level 3s to do. Yes, we were not, or I should say no, we did not look up the actual proficiency guidelines. We were coming up with these random expectations on our own and thinking that they were appropriate and realistic for our students. Probably, had we actually taken the time to sit down with some intention and look at, what are these guidelines that y'all are talking about? Like, where are you getting this stuff? And really looked at what the experts, at what other experts have already put out there for us. Then I just might have like saved myself a couple of years or semesters, and my poor students too. Like those classes of, why are you not debating in subjunctive and present and and imperfect and the conditional and the future
why can't
and the present perfect that we did yesterday? Like, what is,
they are now, Adrienne. I don't know if you've been teaching this past semester, but my level 1 students are using the plusquamperfect. So I'm like, you can see that Google Translate like that. Like,
yeah, they are.
So they're really advanced right now. I think try again.
Yeah, they are. But I mean, for real, and I kind of like it kind of makes my face burn a little bit to think about, just some of those totally unrealistic and unfair expectations. And then when you sit down and you ask yourself some of these questions, like what I have here, what am I expecting for them to do? Then it does kind of force you into a mindset of more intentional planning, which, my God, couldn't we all use so much more of right now?
Yes.
Yeah, and for me too, I think preparing this presentation, because I'm just going to be honest, this year has really been a struggle for me. And I have never truly been a technological person. Cindy, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna call you out. Cindy and I have never really been tech people. I don't know about Cindy. Cindy's probably fabulous now. But you know, being forced into like having to plan differently, having to use resources that I wasn't using before, I am finding myself relying a lot more on trying to be much more intentional, and realizing that that not only helps the students out, but it helps me out. Like I'm not as stressed when I have a plan and when I have thought things through.
Mm.
So moving on to the second step, then determining your acceptable evidence. What does that mean? It's like,
Right.
what am I using? Just like what Meredith was saying, how am I determining now that I know that this is the end goal? What am I actually using to determine that this is an A, that this is a 95, that this is a B? What rubrics are we using? What are these guidelines? What are these parameters? Do I have examples? Not just for my students, but for me, right? And I don't know about you all, but I have found that many semesters I have either completely skipped any of these steps, or I've kind of mixed them up, right? Or been in class and I've kind of introduced an assignment, and then a student raises their hand and they're like, "Can you show us some examples?" And I'm like, "Yeah, snap."
No, I cannot.
Did not plan on that. Yes. And so then you're like randomly trying to come up with an example off the top of your head and looking totally unorganized. Or is it just me? Yeah, I see somebody.
Right. It's all of us, right? Or like stuff I think I've saved, like stuff I think I've saved, where I'm like, yeah, let me find.
Not here.
You know, like like you said, let me come up with something. Oh, no problem. I'll post it tomorrow.
Yeah. As I
won't.
quickly type it up.
Right.
Or look up online examples of this.
Yes. Or I'm
yes.
like proofing other students' work. I'm like, this one was really good. Yeah, like let me give you another novice student's work to model on.
Not being intentional.
Great.
Not being intentional. And I wrote down here for me too, that this is also, and Meredith mentioned this a little earlier when she was kind of talking about this step, that if you happen to be working in a department, sometimes this step can be a little controversial step, right? It can cause a little tension. Yeah. Because, for example, if I'm teaching level 2 and Cindy's also teaching level 2, and our expectation is that we want our students to write and complete sentences, right, with this new vocab. That's our expectation. But then I find it acceptable that the students aren't really conjugating the verbs correctly. They don't have that subject verb agreement. But to me, it's like, it's still, I still know what they're saying, and they still have the components of a complete sentence. It's just not grammatically accurate. And so I still give that student, you know, a 97. And then Cindy is like, that is not acceptable. These are the guidelines that I'm using. And her Spanish 2 student is getting an 85 on that. And so then where is that alignment? That's that word too that that Meredith was bringing up. This is one of those steps that kind of helps to streamline that alignment. And especially for departments like ours at Peachtree Ridge, where we have like 98 teachers. And so it is incredibly important for the success of our students, for our teachers, that we work together to come up with what are our expectations and what are we going to use to determine success or failure or, you know, mediocrity, whatever, of those results. Yeah.
And I think that's a really slippery slope too. To like do it, not doing that, I should say, not doing that can be a slippery slope to, animosity, obviously, but also, like you said, that emotional component, but also undermining your program. If everyone, we're just going to keep throwing Cindy under the bus, Cindy. If everyone's like, I need to get, Miss Millard for Spanish, we'll throw out a language you don't teach, Cindy, or Miss White, Miss White's the easy Spanish teacher, Miss Millard's the easy Spanish teacher. Oh shoot, I got Miss Padilla. Oh, I'm really sad. Sorry, you guys are the only people I can see. So I'm going to use you. Then all of a sudden, if the adults start believing the kids, which is a problem, if the adults start believing what they hear, because the kids do it within earshot every time. They're like, hi, Miss Riley, I miss you. I hate level 17, and you're like, she can hear you right now. She's right there. Miss Millard's better, but I love, whatever. And you're like, dude, like, we're okay. Hi. I mean, like you said, you've got to like work with those people. This can get tense and this can get weird. And so as adults, when you've made those decisions, like, oh, fine, they can do yo comer, like this unit, but next unit, it's got to be like, come on, can we tighten up those verbs if you're able to have those honest conversations and kind of meet people like where they are? Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's when kids get the same, like the message, the consistent message, right. And you can grow a program because people are on the same page as much as we can be. Our value systems are all different, and our language learning experiences are all different.
Yeah,
huge. Yeah, absolutely.
And so then that brings to the final step of, finally, after you have established the first two steps of intentional planning, now we can go into what are the activities, what are the assessments, what are some of the instructional strategies that I can use that are going to help me get the results that I want. And I am sure you all have also been here where it's like you just come up with this random activity, either because you're totally unplanned for that day, or you just like think in the spur of the moment, like, oh, this would be, a fun thing to do. And so let's play this game. And then let's do avalancha. And then we're going to do this fly swatter game. And then we're going to, and then you realize at the end, like, that was all fun and the kids had a lot of fun, but what was the purpose of that, right? Or like for me, I have had classes where, we have spent 2 weeks in a unit and we have done all of these kind of vocab specific recognition and production games. Just to get them up, to get them moving and having fun and loving the class and blah, blah, blah. And then that Friday, I'm like, okay, folks, now that we've done all of these games where you've just been pointing at things and calling out Spanish words or slapping the word on the board or running up and grabbing the word. And that was so amazing. And we had so much fun. Now I want you to write this letter.
Not a problem, right? You guys
are right. And then you're looking at the papers and you're like, my God, these kids suck. Like,
this is
terrible. Right? Like, why are they only just like writing random words and they can't put these in coherent sentences? And you're not kind of putting two and two together that we didn't actually practice that.
Right.
That might have been my goal, but what we did in class was something totally different. And I am all for, having fun and doing all kinds of those things. But one thing that I have, that I feel like I have gotten a little better at and a little bit more intentional with, especially with the years of experience, is kind of figuring out, okay, how do my activities align with those two previous steps, right? So taking that example again of, okay, if one of my end goals is that I want them to write these complete sentences, I want them to use this particular vocab, I want them to use this grammar and put them together and do this writing, then my planning and my activity should look a little more like, okay, we're going to start a little small. We will start with vocab recognition and vocab production. Allow them to do something that's low intensity, to intentionally lower their affective filter, make them comfortable, make them feel confident that they recognize the vocab, so that then I can take that and advance the next activities that have to do with grammar or combining them into little phrases, things like that. But I'm working my way up and I'm being much more intentional with what I'm planning, instead of just kind of coming up with activities because they sound good or they look good or they make the kids look busy.
Right.
I don't like who has been there.
Important.
What can I do?
Look like you're learning, everybody. Look like you're learning.
What can I get these people to do?
Right.
To just like sit down and look like they're doing something.
Yeah.
Because I have not taken the time to plan.
Right.
And
I was gonna have
so
like a confession too. You just made me realize, like, speaking of confession session, all of this requires that we have the assessment already planned. And I think for me, that was my major step, because I was making the quiz Thursday night, the Friday quiz Thursday for like too long, the Friday quiz Thursday night. And so like you said, when kids ask for examples or they ask, what's going to be on the quiz? Then it's generic, like, well, what we've been doing. What's just, well, what should I study? Everything. Because I didn't know, because I hadn't made it yet. And then that's really embarrassing. Like, I'm not sure yet. Exactly. How many questions fit a number? Right. I don't know.
Enough to get the job done. Yes. And for me too, it has, like, with our department, we already have so many assessments made. And so along with that, that statement, going back and taking a look at the assessments that you already have planned, because sometimes, I can get into a bad habit of saying, well, I already have that quiz, and so I know it's there. And then like, that's the only thing that I do, but I don't go back to say, was there something about that quiz that I didn't necessarily like? Or perhaps just with this semester, maybe we didn't get to everything that was on that quiz. Or maybe I want to reword some of these questions. I know, like with Nina and I working together with Spanish 2 a couple of years ago, we really tried to be very intentional with sitting down and looking at the assessments ahead of time and planning out, like, what is it that we are going to do that's on the assessment? What is it too that, like, some of these questions on the assessment are actually asking, right? Is this a listening comprehension question, or is this just a, like, do you hear the word that I'm saying and you can identify the word on the test? And there have been many times where I have used a test that's already been created that I might have used for years, but having not taken the time beforehand that particular semester to go back and look at it, and just for whatever reason, maybe I'm just kind of better planned that semester, maybe I'm feeling good, but I've taken a look and then been like, I don't necessarily like that. Like, that's not really a fair question. And I didn't really think about that before, because I actually didn't go through the test and ask those types of questions or align it to what we are doing in class. So yeah, really good, good points. Okay, so a couple of other tips and just things that I feel like I have picked up along the way. One of those is in my planning, incorporating the grades. And what I mean by that is what you're literally putting in the grade book. So for Peachtree Ridge, we used to be like we still are a semester system, but we have switched now into quarters. So before the quarter system, the students would get 1 grade per quarter for each of their classes. And now that we're in the quarter system, they have like 9 weeks of the course. So for this semester in March, like March 10th and 11th is when the end of the quarter ends. And so our students will get 1 grade for that quarter from now until March. And then at the end, when we come back to school after fall break, or well, this isn't the fall. So once we come back to school after March 10th,
Whenever.
I know, whenever, we have a brand new grade book and the students like start fresh. And so then they will get another grade that's from March, like the middle of March until May. So for me, what I very quickly figured out about myself when the quarter system started was that I was so not being intentional about what I was putting in the grade book. Yes, we had kind of an idea of, how many grades you needed to have in the grade book, but it was broad. There wasn't really any accountability, and you could basically have like 300 grades in the grade book, and and that was that. Yeah, and with the quarter system, there's a very specific number of grades that we have to have. We have to have 3 tests, 6 quizzes, and about 9 to 10 classwork or homework grades. I will admit, and again, I'm going to call myself out on this, the very first semester that we did this, I did not plan that at all with my Spanish 5. Toward the end of the quarter, I was in panic mode when I looked in my grade book and realized I have 1 quiz. What have I been doing? I have like 3 classwork, and then I was it was complete scramble of like, hey, so this game we're gonna do is gonna count as a quizzy quiz. The kids are like, yeah.
Right.
So it was a hot mess.
Percentage of accuracy. It's a test now. Thank you. It's your midterm.
It was a hot mess. Yes. Grades shot up like this. But when I think about like what the consequences of that are, I mean, I can sit around and laugh about it, but thank God that, like an administrator wasn't all in my grade book, that a parent wasn't really all in my grade book and complain, because I really could have, it really could have been bad for some of these students and for myself. And so after that experience, I very quickly started at the very beginning of the next semester. I was like, I am literally writing down and marking down, what are these 3 tests that I'm going to give? What are these 6 quizzes? What are these classwork and homework assignments? And what I found is that by doing that, it by default forced me to actually look at what is it that I'm even giving them and why am I putting it in the grade book? What kind of work am I evaluating? Is it just like you were here and you were breathing and you wrote your name and or whatever? And so it forced all of these questions that I hadn't really asked myself before in terms of the work that I was having the students turn in and me recording it and putting it in the grade book. And so this is now a system that even if we revert back to the semester system, truly for me has kind of transformed just the planning in general, and has allowed me to confidently be able to say, this is something that we're going to do as practice. It's practice in class, whatever. This is going to be in the grade book and not have to guess. Or I'm sure you all have had experiences too, where you just give them something and then you determine later, like, well, it was I guess I'll put it in the grade book. And then only half of them have turned it in, and just like all of that kind of mess. So tip number 2, consider the different language skills and pandemic teaching, the technology use. So as language teachers, we have 5 core language skills. We have speaking, writing, listening, reading, and then cultural awareness, which is one that gets skipped over a lot. I am very guilty of that. I tend to focus on other things, and then cultural awareness is kind of an afterthought. And so for me, because also the fact that cultural awareness is an afterthought, literally writing these things down as I am planning, having all of these skills, you know, in my planner, on my computer on the side, and as I am doing my planning, going back and saying, do I have speaking? Do I have writing? And then not even just that, as now someone who has taught multiple levels, I see the importance of things such as listening. Well, what kind of listening? Is it authentic listening? Or have they just been listening to me this whole time? Are they listening to different accents? You know, or again, is it just me? And then suddenly on the test, I'm throwing in somebody with an España Zeta, and the kids are like, what the heck? You know, and of course I'm wondering, like, why? Just listen and answer the questions.
Right.
You know, things that you don't really think about. What other types of listening is it? Is it just plain audio? Are they watching videos where they're seeing people's mouths move? Podcasts where there's background noise? As a level 5 and an AP teacher, the listening that they have has a whole bunch of background noise. I mean, it's literally like it's a podcast. You know, it's like NPR, where you're hearing babies crying and things in the background. And for many of the students, that is always one of the first complaints that they have, is like, I can't, there's all of this stuff. And so then I started like kind of thinking, I need to be doing stuff like this in the lower levels as well, so that they can get used to, you know, having like listening to someone like we would in normal life, where somebody's baby might be screaming and you're still having a conversation with it, you know. The reading, is it authentic reading as well? Or is it something that I have created every single time that has super simple language, and, you know, I'm doctoring everything up so that the lowest of the kids can understand it, and they're not seeing anything that is authentic. And so these are things that you know, I have just totally realized throughout the years of, we'll spend 2 weeks doing writing and speaking and all kinds of other activities that are fun, and then they take a test and there's 3 listenings and I'm like, snap.
Oops, sorry kids. Yeah, 100%.
Right. Good luck on that listening that you haven't done in 2 weeks.
And I can't help it because I'm hitting the answer key as they're taking it. I'm going, what are the answers for these? Let me listen. Let me replay it. You know, like, I'm not even sure. Oh, the answer isn't one of the choices. My bad. Sorry, first period.
Yeah, right. And then it's just a whole mess. And the students are mad, and you're trying to act like what? Y'all been listening to me all day?
Guys, come on.
Knowing that you were wrong. You were wrong for that.
100%. Like, and then I feel like I get defensive. I'm like, well, you know what? That's fine. We don't have to do any listening at all. It's like, it's just a fire that keeps exploding.
Right. You know you're trifling for that.
Right. Dropping matches. You know what? Forget it. We're not gonna. And they're all like, damn, okay. Like, did this need to? Yes, it did.
Shame. I know. So tip number 3, get organized.
Yes.
I love a planner. I love a plan. I have a personal planner. Isn't this fabulous? With the sticker. And yes, you see, I took these pictures in my room. I literally will spend money buying these stickers. Yes, I will. So don't judge. Yes. And I am someone who, the planner for me is a visual reminder too of a lot of these other points that I mentioned, because for me, it's very easy to maybe go into a meeting with my coworkers and yes, I had that last year. To go into these meetings with, your coworkers, and you're sitting here and you're planning and you're like, yes, that's awesome. I totally need to remember that authentic listening. And then you go in your classroom and you're like doing random stuff because you've forgotten all about it. You're not even thinking about it. And so to me, it's like, write this stuff down and organize it however it is that works for you. And if anything too, because I know that by looking at this, you all just want to slap me for how together I am. But honestly, negative, yes, let's be real. I still very much enjoy this, but if anything too, sometimes like for this year, that has been very difficult for me. Just in terms of like time management and trying to figure out the tech stuff, and I'm just all of this, and so this presentation for me too, in preparing it and in doing it, is a good reminder to me that I need to continue to do it as well. And sometimes these planners just make you look like you got your life together.
Half the battle.
When then you go home and it's complete chaos and you just want to cry. And the babies are, I have now a 9-month-old and a 4-year-old, and the 9-month-old is screaming, and I'm trying to like think about the next day, and I can't because the 4-year-old's like talking my head off. God bless her. If anybody has a preschooler, you know what I'm talking about, or you've had one before. Anyway, and so still, like, for me, these just help streamline my thinking, if anything, even if it's just to survive. Like, what am I doing today? And I did not plan it, but it's today. Let me write it down and, help myself out a little bit. And so with this link, with this page though, this is the Happy Planner. The Happy Planner is my absolute favorite, and they have all kinds of stickers. They have teacher planners, they even have student planners, but there's so many others out there. And then if you don't want to spend the money on this kind of stuff, even just like downloading calendar, like word calendars and stuff, is just useful. Okay, and then finally bringing it back on a personal level. And Meredith brought this, Meredith brought this up. Okay. Meredith brought this up a little earlier, but you'll notice that I have again the self-reflection, constant communication with your coworkers. This pandemic has taught me, or has highlighted for me, I guess, the fact that I am super social, and the constant communication that my department and I are really used to having, I miss it so much. And I realize just how much that communication has honestly helped me professionally, helped me personally, has helped me with alignment, has helped me with my goals, with different perspectives. Having those tough and those honest, those professional conversations has gotten me to a point where I feel like, whereas maybe like 10 years ago, I might have had certain very strict perspectives on elements of, teaching, and having fresh faces come in with new ideas and things has just really broadened my horizons, which has done nothing but help me to plan more intentionally. I found that they challenge me to be better. They challenge me to look at myself and to say, what have I been doing? Even if it's just sometimes like I'm walking out in the hall and going to the bathroom. This, of course, was like the old days. not now.
February.
But walking out in the hall to go to the bathroom, and the kids are like screaming in another room and clapping and having some, and I'm like, what the heck is going on up in there?
Mhm.
And like just having that personal challenge of, let me try to be a little bit more intentional of, like, I'm focusing so much on, we got to write, we got to do this, we got to blah, 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 especially with AP and upper level for me, that sometimes I forget about some of that. Like, the kids need to enjoy it too. Like, they're not, sometimes I associate like 5 in AP with, I'm teaching 25-year-old. I'm not. They're like 15, 16, 17. They still want to get up and play Avalancha. They still totally want to do, yes. Yes, they still want to do that. And so anyway, it just using their energy, as you see my last point, from these relationships as fuel for my own personal development and my own personal growth has been very essential for me, I think. And two, one of the reasons why I have stayed at Peachtree Ridge for 13 years and never once, honestly, when they have sent that, like, do you want to leave? And I'm like, leave who? Peachtree Ridge. Like, where are you going?
Right. I literally write on there, you can't get rid of me. And then I'm like, I think it's like official paperwork, but I probably shouldn't write that. But I do.
Yeah,
I'm not going anywhere.
I know. So all of y'all better sit your behind down.
Right. Not leaving.
No. Right. And then finally, and this is my last slide, I just have like some challenge questions for myself and for us of like, have I been planning with intention? Yes or no, with the end goal at the forefront. And if it's no, then what is preventing me from doing so? Is it my life? which for me, honestly, right now that's a big yes. That I know I see other people like, yes,
100%.
which is why I'm yes.
Fine.
And then what can I do like about that? And for me, it has truly been like I'm going to go like back to the calendar. If I can even just like try to get a skeleton unit, that has been somewhat helpful. I might not have all of the details like I normally would have, because I find that my planning period, I literally am spending it like creating stuff sometimes for that day.
Yes.
And so I just, yes. And I mean, it literally is like, and the kids are coming in post.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Right. And you have the kid who's like, I've been trying to get into Zoom the past 15 minutes and there was nothing. Yeah, there was nothing there, Amanda, because I didn't have anything.
The internet's been down today.
Right. But I mean, like, what is preventing me from doing so, and what can I do about it? I have come to accept this year is just, it's not my best year. I have accepted that. I am okay with that. I'm okay with this mediocrity. That sounds terrible, but you all know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yes, I have to accept that and then try to work on the things that I can at least somewhat control. Creating a skeleton unit with my calendar, writing things down to remind me of some of the important facts and elements that I want to hit, all of those types of things. And then lastly, if you're working with others, are you all working together to create this backward design, or are you working by yourself? And remembering that alignment, and that this is a teamwork type of thing. This backward design, intentional planning shouldn't just be you in your room by yourself. If there are 7 other teachers who are teaching the same thing, or even if they're not teaching the same thing, coming up with ideas together and seeing, how are you doing this, and blah, 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 and communicating with those different level teachers to perhaps help you to more intentionally plan what you have.
Mhm.
And so that is all that I have. Thank you all so much for listening and engaging. The folks who I see on my screen right now, I have 100% appreciated all of the
Yeah.
that has given me my nerves went away. If I was
Yes.
super chatty, you certainly didn't make me think that I was.
No,
So
absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Meredith, for this opportunity.
Oh,
And
of course.
I really hope that you all got something out of this.
Of
So
course.
thank
Yeah,
you.
no, absolutely. No, thank you. I put we've put some links in the chat and also just like some other tidbits. I think I'm trying to remember, and I can't remember, Marty, stop me if I misspeak, but at TFLA, like in the pre-COVID times, February, no, whenever it was last year, we had those little quick round sessions at lunch or sometime, I don't know, table to table, blah, blah, blah. And this was one of them, was talking about department alignment. And, it was in the context of backward design. And I had kind of forgotten that until we were talking yesterday, Adrienne. And then when you said it again, I was like, oh yeah. And I remembered back to that. I think that's the piece when we backward design that's really easy to mix, or to miss, not mix, or to get lost in the mix. Because we think so often on material and content, and like, we're teachers, we're achievers. Like, what am I going to get through? What am I going to do? What are they going to be? Whatever. And that's a lot to think about if those bigger human kind of emotional pieces aren't in place. If you're in a department where people haven't talked to each other in years, literally years. I've been in that situation where I'm like, why don't they? Oh, okay. And then someone's got to be like, pss, 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 and fill you in as to like why person A and person B like don't say hi to each other. Super weird. And that's just, scraping the surface of what a lot of language departments experience, because we go between levels. We all have different learning experiences. We all have different study abroad experiences, if we have any at all. We all have different levels of language proficiency. We might be a native speaker. We might be a near native speaker. We might live, have married, be dating, and raising our children multilingual. And all of those things play into how personal an experience teaching language is. And so I might walk by, Adrienne's room, yeah, and they're playing Avalancha, and I'm like, awesome, love Avalancha. And then someone else might be like, ugh, a grammar game, unbelievable. Like, what about meaning? And you're like, okay, yeah, but also, like, grammar is not a 4-letter word. Chill out, everybody. But there's that little inner voice goes judge, 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 judge. And or you see somebody's kid acting a fool out in the hallway, and you're like, oh, typical Nina. Her kids are just blah, blah, blah. There goes Meredith's class, loud as heck, or whatever. And all of those things start to eventually undermine, like Adrienne mentioned, those relationships. And I know we've like blown up the chat with like, we love our department, and Cindy, we miss you. But like, we really do have this kind of holy grail of, you can have sort of a, like, we got to talk about this quiz because I hate this. And 9 times out of 10, the other person goes, oh, thank God, this is so hard to grade. And you're like, oh, thank goodness. Can we make this a little bit easier? Is that okay? And you can be vulnerable in that way. And that's really powerful. I think that's the foundation to so many of these things. And we also mentioned, there were some other things mentioned in the chat, like what are, if you're looking at organized or like having it together or, planning, can you even determine in our department, in our course team, however, or if you're by yourself, cool. Quizzes, especially right now, quizzes this year in level 2 will all have 10 questions. Tests will all have 20 questions. They're done. Goodbye. Like, how can you reduce the decision fatigue that you're making while you're also planning, grading, getting to know kids, giving feedback, answering 80,000 emails, that's the actual number, that are all in like lowercase with the email in the subject line. Like, how are we reducing all of these, like I said, just decisions that we're making, while also just the day-to-day business of teaching. So I'm super thankful, obviously always, for you, Adrienne, but like that you mentioned that piece, because I think we often think about planning like activities and whatever. Yes. And, like you said, you also have to reflect. You also have to be honest. What have I done in the past? What were kids actually able to do in the past? Am I remembering pre-COVID more fondly than maybe I should be? And how am I, like, what's really going on, if that makes sense. And so I'm really thankful for that. Adrienne, I did have one question for you. If you had to say one thing for planning, sort of with the end in mind, obviously backward design, that you think, I don't want to say as a group, so let me go back. If you had to say one thing that has taken away a lot of that decision fatigue, or that has made planning so much easier, either at a department level or just on your personal level, is there anything that you have that you're like, oh, I'm super glad for this year? Or if I didn't do blank to plan, I would be like completely lost. And I'll say what mine is. Like, if you had to think, I'll say mine is, I really appreciate our grading guidelines. I appreciate that our, for those of us, for the rest of you who don't work with us, our department chair has set forward those guidelines she mentioned. Like in one unit, 3 small, 2 medium, 1 big. So like 3 classwork, 2 quiz, 1 test. That is like one of probably 3 things that have saved my sanity these last couple of years, in like having a report card, like official, not averaged report card after 9 weeks. Not having to decide how many grades or what to grade, if that makes sense. I don't know if you'd say the same. Or
yeah, yes, I would say that is definitely one of mine. That's one of that was why that was the first point on my tip thing, is incorporating grades, because like I said, that really transformed how I started looking at assignments. I would say another for me, and this might not necessarily have anything to do with backward design, but in terms of making planning easy and with our department, is having coworkers with whom, when I collaborate with, like we have a very good understanding of, this is the end goal that we are going to plan together. These are activities that we want to plan together. But I also understand that sometimes what happens in my classroom, happens in my classroom is unique, and it might not happen in yours. And therefore now I'm behind 2 days. Now I don't necessarily want to do this thing that we planned. I kind of have, another idea. And I mention that because I know that for many people, especially when you're planning with others, or in a course team, that can be a big stressor. And I feel like with all of the people who I have worked with, there really is this easy understanding of, we planned this and now I'm going to change the plan, and I'm cool with that. And, we're going to do what is right for us and what's right for our classes, but then we're going to come back together at the end of the day to still look at those results and look at the next unit and still plan together. Nina and I work extremely well like that. And we have that understanding personally, professionally of, I'm living life. And so this is what we planned.
Right.
But it's just like cool with me because the same thing happened.
Right.
And so that really reduces a lot of stress, I think, in working in groups.
I would say there's a huge difference too in like collaborating on a quiz, because like, to give other people context too, typically my experience has been, unless you guys are doing something better, is like when on a course team, if we all teach level 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, like pretty much giving the same quizzes, tests, etc. Again, to be consistent and to align with kids, because they talk, right? Like they're oh, Miss Smith's quiz was like 5 questions and it was all pictures, but Mr. Jones gave a quiz and it was 37. I mean, they talk to each other. So being as consistent as possible with each other, there's a huge difference in, like, maybe Nina teaches medias and I prefer calcetines. It's one thing to go get the Word doc and go like, oh, you know what? My kids aren't going to know medias. Let me put in calcetines and then like move on. It's another thing to nod and smile in a meeting and go, yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely. And then continue to do your own thing behind closed doors while undermining your own, your own team, your own people, and your own program. And so I'm really grateful that we don't do that I know of. I don't think anybody's in that, but like, God, I hope nobody is. But no, it's, and being open and honest enough to go, okay, I love this quiz. I love everything about it. I'm definitely going to change questions 9 and 10. My kids have no idea what entonces means, or whatever. Like, I did not get to that. They have never seen that. It won't even look like a cognate, and someone else going, no problem. Like changing a couple questions, whatever, but still having the same basic expectations, and not having to be in lockstep, I think is really, really, really nice. So yeah, I completely agree. Yay. Well, thanks guys. We're going to have, if nobody objects, we're going to have the recording available. So the same place that you went, bit.ly/the 6Fs and then 2021. That also, like I said at the beginning, has the recording link. It's a playlist. So once the video renders, I'll upload it. And if there's any other like tools or links or anything you want to drop in the chat, I have that saved as well. So if you just email me, I'll put my email in the chat. You can email me and I can send the chat, the transcript, the direct playlist link. It's in the slideshow, but if you just want the direct link, it's no problem. And, that'll be awesome. Oh my God, Nina, is that Mia? Why is she so big? Why are the children growing? And what's happening? This is upsetting. She's supposed to stay a baby forever. Mia. Oh, look at her. Oh my God, she's okay. Well, this is, she was just born, but okay. We're fine. Everything's fine. Yay. So yeah, thank you so much. Kelly's offering to make, put Go Formative in an open relationship. So if you're interested in Go Formative and you're interested in dating Go Formative, she doesn't mind sharing it. It's a great tool. Kelly, I'm just calling you out in the chat there. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so we'll stay on here for a couple seconds, for a couple minutes, if that's okay. But otherwise, thank you so much. If you look at the schedule for next week, we've got some more spicy topics coming up. Next Tuesday is how colonized are you? So looking at your curriculum, looking at whose stories are you telling, how are you telling them, how are you portraying them, and how can we still maybe not even realize it, but teach kind of a colonized curriculum, even as aware or anti-racist, anti-biased as we think our teaching is. How are we actually reflecting? And what are the values that we're putting forward? So more great stuff. Nilan, I didn't even see you in here. God, sneaky, you guys in the Zoom. So awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording. So now we can swear. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding.
Thank you guys.
Yes.
I'm going to go put my